I did 30 days off alcohol and I did 14 days off of caffeine with a 14-day taper prior to a complete elimination. For context as to why I decided to do this, I'm a pretty casual beer drinker, at least I was, and I'm trying to avoid that, where I have a beer on a Tuesday night or a beer on a Thursday night. I don't drink heavy, I don't drink a lot, or I have my days out, sure, but on a week to week basis, it's the Tuesday night beer, the Thursday night beer, whatever day of the week it is, beer or two that really interrupts my sleep and my schedule that week. Even though it sounds nice in the short term, I think the long term effect, like the next day, is that I just feel worse the whole next day. And I hate to say it, but it's even from like a beer or two. And as far as caffeine goes, I actually am back on caffeine as of yesterday. Stuff's amazing, you're not gonna lie. But as far as caffeine does go, the reason I decided to do this is because my tolerance has gotten really high, or it had gotten really high. I've reduced it a lot now, but I was a pretty heavy caffeine drinker. I'm talking like I would have 2 cups of coffee, like cups like this size of coffee every morning, at least. And then I would also usually in the afternoon at like 1, 2, 3 o'clock, I would have a cup of black tea or two or three. I usually buy the cups of teas or the kind of black tea where you can make several like cups out of one. It's not necessarily a teapot. I just make it like right in here, and it's amazing. But I was just having too much caffeine, and I actually noticed less of an effect of caffeine than I did alcohol, which I think alcohol is the bigger eliminator, and I think caffeine's not as disruptive, or it's not as interruptive or bad for me in that sense. I think who I am and what I do also is a big reason as to why this is kind of an important subject. I run multiple businesses. I run a holding company. Essentially, right now, at the size the holding company is essentially we have 2 cleaning companies. So I really run a commercial cleaning company, which is my main company, and then I run a house cleaning company. But I digress. I run 2 companies essentially day to day, and I want to optimize my health for efficiency and for just overall productivity. And I find that the biggest limiter of my productivity is my just overall health, like how well I'm sleeping, how well I'm eating, how much I'm working out, my overall energy level. And the higher my energy level is, the higher my output, the more I just get done, the more I'm more willing to take risks, the more I'm more willing to just be effective throughout the day, or am effective, I guess would be a better way to say it. And so this was really about health optimization. And, it's me, is part of the process of me trying to become, the best version of me. And how do I become the best CEO of my businesses? You know what I mean? And that's the objective with all of this. When I did this experiment, I did set some rules at the beginning of the year. So I did do this on January 1st. So you can call me whatever you want, but it's a New Year's resolution of sorts, right? I mean, I don't necessarily know if I believe in New Year's resolutions, because if you weren't working on it before, why are you going to work on it now? But I did start January 1st. So it's kind of a New Year's resolution. But the rules are zero alcohol for 30 days. I wanted to cut caffeine out for 14 days, 4 full days off caffeine. And during this, I'm still training 6 days a week. And I'm doing a calorie cut right now as well, because I'm trying to lean out my body, get rid of some of my excess fat that I've accumulated over the years. And I'm sleeping like a baby right now. I try to sleep as much as I possibly can. I try to get 100% sleep score every night. Whoop changed their scores recently, so it's kind of hard to get 100% sleep score per se. But I try to get 100% of my sleep needed every night, and that's like my minimum. Like I don't set an alarm in the morning. I try to wake up when I wake up, but if I wake up and I'm like didn't sleep very well, I just continue to sleep until I hit that number that I want to hit, and then I get up if I can. That's not always possible. Sometimes I just can't continue to sleep. So that was the overall reason for doing this, was just health optimization as far as productivity goes as well. I want to increase my productivity and my optimization. So let's dive into how it actually went though, because I think that's probably why you're going to watch this video. Let's talk alcohol at first. So quitting alcohol was surprisingly easier than I anticipated, if I'm being honest. I'd never really thought about it much for 30 days. I will say in the first week, there was multiple times where I'm like, a beer sounds nice right now. But it was like pretty easy to shut down. I think the first week, I was like, the first Wednesday, I was like, it'd be kind of like, I just want a beer right now. Just like one beer while I'm watching my show with my girlfriend, you know what I mean? To relax and unwind for the day. And the only other time I remember being really hard to say no to a drink is when we went and got a dinner at a fancy-ish establishment. And I wanted a glass of wine. I'm like, a glass of wine sounds really nice with this dinner I'm having right now. But that was the only 2 times I remember like really feeling like that was when I wanted alcohol. Now, when I gave up alcohol, this is when at the same time I went down to 1 cup of caffeine a day. And the caffeine cut was significantly harder. I'm not going to lie. When I went down to 1 cup, it was bad for day or two, but then I kind of got used to it. The hardest part, to be honest, was I'm setting a new rule for caffeine intake from now on, is that I have to wait 90 minutes, an hour to 90 minutes until I have my first cup of coffee. Because with the way caffeine works, it actually suppresses your sleep chemicals in your brain and your what I believe they're called adenosine and your adenosine receptors. Caffeine blocks, which is the chemical that induces sleepiness in you. And so caffeine does not give you energy, it suppresses tiredness. And so, one of the things that you're supposed to do with caffeine to have it effectively and efficiently is that you wait until your body naturally like reduces the adenosine in your body as you wake up, and then once that's over with, then you have a cup of coffee, and it's more effective, and it decreases your tolerance level and the effect on your body generally, instead of waking up and pounding one right away, which is what I used to do, to be honest. Like, it's the first thing I did in the morning, make a cup of coffee. Sometimes I didn't even want to move until I had a cup of coffee. It was bad. That first time I had to wait 90 minutes for that first cup of coffee when I started this, I remember I was in a meeting because I'd woke up probably 7:30 and I had to wait till 9. And I had a meeting early in the morning. It wasn't it was not an important meeting, but I just remember sitting there thinking, "Oh my god, I just wanted this guy to shut up." And he was not doing anything annoying, nothing ridiculous. I just in my head, I'm like, "Oh, dude, I can't even think. I can't even think of responses." I'm like, "I just don't not want to talk to this guy right now." And nothing against that guy. I just had not had caffeine that day, and it was really, really killing me. And my head had kind of started to hurt by that point already as well. And then I had my cup of coffee, and I felt fine. I had like a slight mild headache maybe throughout the day, and that was pretty easy. Going through that first week, the hardest part was genuinely was the first hour or two of the day where I like would limit caffeine. It was the next week that was really, 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 really hard. Because what I did is I went down to half calf. It was a homemade concoction. I use beans here to make my coffee, and I made half caffeinated half caffeinated coffee and decaf coffee. And I just mixed them up in a bowl, and I drank that all week. So it was like my homemade version of half calf, but I didn't technically buy a half calf. That was just like how I did it. And so I think my caffeine consumption went down drastically when I did that, and it was below like a threshold or something. I don't know exactly, but that first 5 days was hell, dude. I had headaches, absolutely no energy. I wanted to lay on the couch and do nothing, no motivation. I didn't want to work. I had headache. It was bad. It was painful and hard that first 5 days that I did that, and that was such a struggle that I said, am I just extending my pain by doing a taper rather than a cold turkey? Which I think is a fair question. But on day 5, which was Friday, I decided, okay, I'm not going to do any more caffeine. So I quit on Saturday morning. My initial plan was to quit on Monday, that next following week, but I quit early. And to my amazement, to be honest, the first day off caffeine completely was actually the easiest day I'd have in 5 days. And so it made me wonder if when I went to half calf, if I was like, that was like my actual withdrawal phase to an extent where like my body's used to X amount and I'm dropping all the way down to this half cup of coffee. And it's like that difference was more drastic than anything I had experienced yet. And so it made me wonder if that was the week that it was really, really hard. Because when I quit, I was like surprised at how good I felt still. And so I was like, I think I went through the worst of the withdrawal phases last week, but potentially had made the withdrawal not as unbearable by doing half cap because I still had a little caffeine. So that was my theory on that. I don't know if any of you guys have ever quit caffeine, but I'd be curious as what your guys' experience were like with that. If like it was an immediate like crash when you went to half cap or you went low or a half cup, or whatever you did, and then after you quit, it was hard. Because I know in the past I've tried to go cold turkey, and frankly, the couple times that I've tried to go to cold turkey, it lasts like 4 hours. It's like noon, and I'm like, all right, I have to have a fucking cup of coffee. Freaking. I just stopped swearing. I did make it like 4 days once, but I remember it was like the most brutal 4 days of my life. So this is the longest I'd ever gone off caffeine in like 12 years. But once I made it through that phase of being off caffeine, like week 3, like the end of week 3 of this whole process, like no alcohol and no caffeine. I also felt really good on week 2 or week 1 when I was having 1 cup of coffee. That was nice. I felt good that week. Once I was a completely eliminated coffee and I completely had eliminated alcohol, I felt amazing. I was sleeping amazing. And overall, I felt like my energy level was good. One of the biggest things is that just like when I got up in the morning, it was so much easier just to wake up. Like the grogginess that you feel first thing in the morning when you're a heavy caffeine drinker is intense. And it's like, I don't even want to live my day yet. Like, that's a little extreme, but I don't even want to, like, I don't want to do anything productive until I've had a cup of coffee. Like, don't talk to me until I've had a cup of coffee. Like, that's genuinely like I was that guy. sipping that obnoxiously on purpose. I'm not gonna lie. So waking up was easier, and the other thing that I did find was potentially relatively more true is that I had a stabler energy level. There was less drastic crash. Although for me, that didn't seem to be that big of an impactor. I think the biggest difference I noticed was genuinely that caffeine in particular really drives up anxiety. And so going without caffeine, I remember like reacting or being in certain situations where like I feel like my anxiety would usually be really high, but it was like down low in this situation and it like didn't even bother me. So that was kind of a unique experience to go through where I was like, oh, I wonder how much of my baseline anxiety, which to be fair, I'm not a very anxious person, but I was like, I wonder how much of my baseline anxiety is caused by caffeine or over caffeine consumption, right? And so that was the biggest takeaway I noticed being off caffeine. And like I said, I think the other major takeaway I took out of this is that my sleep did improve overall. And I think that was from alcohol and caffeine. I have my Whoop on and I have a lot of stats which are interesting and I can show you screenshots of these. My Whoop tells me that caffeine actually increases my quality of sleep, which is I found fascinating. And actually when I have on my Whoop data that I'd have 4 cups of caffeine, it said when I was having 4 cups of caffeine, I was having my most effective increased in sleep. And I thought that was really interesting. I don't know why that is either. I think maybe it's because my increased output when I have caffeine, potentially. That would be my only theory on that. But I will say overall, like I feel the best when I have like a small to moderate amount of coffee. Like after I wait a while, and I feel the best that day. Like that is my optimal position on caffeine. On the opposite side of that spectrum, though, is alcohol. Alcohol has a negative 17% impact on my recovery on Whoop. And the biggest driver of that, well, it's really two things, but one's like massive is that my HRV gets massively impacted by alcohol. If I have alcohol, my HRV is literally like 20 to 25% lower that next morning. And also, typically, my sleep is impacted a bit. And it's only if I have more than 2 or 3 beers, though, my sleep gets really impacted, according to my Whoop. But it has a negative 17% overall effect on my body, which is the highest by far. So I thought that was really, it's an interesting statistic to follow. So I think from a physiological standpoint, I want to go over some metrics that I actually did track here and how they were performed. So my sleep duration and quality did increase pretty drastically, actually. My ability to fall asleep at night was through the chain, especially like the first week off caffeine. Once I got used to it, I think my body rebalanced. I kind of felt like I did before, where I was like, I'm just tired if I had a high output day. But that is something that when I got off caffeine originally, my dreams were really intense. I had REM rebound, which I didn't even realize that I was having enough caffeine to affect. So I felt that was really interesting. My HRV was relatively not impacted, to be honest. Alcohol does impact it the next day, but rebounds the day after. And caffeine had a negligible effect on it. Alcohol also does raise my resting heart rate the next day, slightly, incrementally, like 2-3% maybe, but caffeine does seem to raise my heart rate, the average heart rate throughout the day, but like my resting heart rate at night or when I'm resting is about the same. Gym performance. Alcohol definitely makes it way harder to make it to the gym the next day. And so without it, I'd never had that like slumpy feeling of like a hangover, like or food cravings or anything. And like the gym performance definitely increased. And caffeine had kind of the opposite effect where I actually felt like caffeine increases my gym performance quite a lot, like actually quite drastically, which I think is one of the main reasons why caffeine has a high impact on my sleep performance. Because if I have caffeine, my gym performance increases, my total energy output that day increases, and so my body's more tired. And that's my theory, my hypothesis as to why that is the case. But yes, my appetite remained the same, to be honest, except for not being hungover. Caffeine, if anything, like actually, I have to step back. I think my appetite did change a little bit. Caffeine, I find, might suppress my appetite slightly. I don't get quite as hungry if I have a cup of coffee in the morning and I wait a while. Alcohol has quite the opposite effect. If I have drinks the night before, specifically beer, my food cravings go through the roof. It's really hard to avoid that extra food or whatever it is that adds fat to your body. And that is one of the hardest parts about alcohol. I might be alone in this theory, but I do tend to find that it's not the alcohol itself that makes me gain weight, which it is in hindsight after you hear what I say, but it's the food I consume when I drink alcohol. But alcohol drives me to eat that food and drives me to be more unhealthy the next day and during. And so one could argue it is the alcohol, but it's also, in my opinion, it's not the calories in general that I consume from alcohol. It's the calories I get from everything else that goes with alcohol. And that's why I'm saying it's not necessarily the alcohol itself that's causing weight gain or whatever it is. It's the food I consume with and after it when I'm hungover or drunk that cause me to have more issues. Alcohol also is an interesting one because it makes you dehydrated. And so the morning after you drink, you actually look leaner a lot of the time, but that's just from dehydration. And then you have a rebound At least I have a rebound where it's like I overhydrate and then my body's like waterlogged for a day or two. And so overall, my body composition definitely decreases from alcohol in the long term. And caffeine seems to have another, again, it's a negligible effect. It does dehydrate me a bit. So I try to make sure I drink a lot of water, but overall, it seems negligible. Mood, anxiety is real. Alcohol definitely gives you increased anxiety the next day. My understanding about that is like it's similar to a lot of things within the body where it's a wave. When you have alcohol, it increases the dopamine in your body. It increases like all these, receptors, make you happy and cheerful or whatever it is, or relaxed. And so there's a rebound effect the next day where it's like you were too high, so now we got to bring you low, and then it evens out again. Caffeine can definitely have that same effect where it brings you too high and then it brings you down. But I don't find that the rebound's nearly as impactful as alcohol is. And I want to say this in this video in general, like I'm not necessarily trying to compare alcohol and caffeine, but it was just that I did them both at once, so it was easy to see like what impacts what. My overall mood was pretty similar, except for the anxiety. I had less anxiety for sure, not without a doubt. Focus without alcohol definitely increases my focus. Without caffeine at all, debatably decreases my focus. I think if I have a cup of coffee, I have increased focus for if I do it right for long periods of time, 5 6 hours. Weekends are tough for alcohol at least because it's a social thing to do. Alcohol is, it's like the going out on a Friday night and like you just have a few drinks with your buddies. Like that is just where alcohol is, and it's tough. But the weekends definitely feel different and actually more productive as well. When you don't drink like on a Saturday night, your Sundays increase in productivity like drastically. No, when I say drink, I mean like genuinely. I mean like just a drink or two. Like it decreases my efficiency the next day. I want to talk about a little about the psychological shift that I went through for this. Realizing how habitually addicted I am to caffeine was very eye opening. I think someone said once I read is that you don't know your relationship with caffeine until you try to quit. It's extremely true. When I quit caffeine, I thought about it nonstop. I'm like, this is a legitimate, very addictive substance that I am addicted to. And it's very hard to realize that and to realize your relationship is so intense with it. So it was really hard to quit. I can only imagine, luckily I don't have this issue but I can only imagine how harder drugs would be. You also do realize alcohol does not add that much to your life. If anything, it drags your life down. It's a hard thing to realize because I love having a cup of coffee or a cup of beer or whatever sometimes. I'm not going to say get rid of it. I think the biggest takeaway is that it's an occasion thing, right? It's not something that you should do on a regular basis. It's special occasions, maybe you've seen your family for the first time in a while and everyone's having a drink, they're loosening up, it's fun, it's outgoing, it's fun. The other thing I think that's really important with alcohol is that you have alcohol, you finish it like 4 hours before you go to bed and you don't have more than one or two. And the thing is that when you decrease your tolerance to both caffeine and alcohol, it takes less to get to where you used to be before. And so staying at that baseline is really important as well, I find. So yeah, finish alcohol like 4 hours before you go to bed and only have a drink or two. And frankly, not more than once, maybe twice a week. I think one of the biggest takeaways from this is that it really gives you an identity shift of like what's possible and like who I am as a person, where it's like, I don't need this cup of alcohol to feel this way. I don't need this cup of caffeine to feel this way. And it's like it gives you this identity shift, right? It gives you an identity shift in the regards of like I don't need to be this person and I'm not this person and this is who I can be without this. Oh, this is interesting. And it gives you that identity shift. I think the biggest unexpected downside is just that caffeine does increase my productivity. It allows me to achieve more throughout the day. I think that was the biggest takeaway I noticed from the regards of caffeine, where it's like this unexpected like lack of motivation sometimes like without it, and it kind of like even when if you don't want to feel like working, like caffeine's really good at just pushing you to want to work. The biggest upside without a doubt, bar none, in my opinion, is the sleep. Without alcohol and without caffeine, sleep is better. It's just, I don't know if there's any other way to say it, it just is better. You sleep harder, you sleep longer, and you sleep better without alcohol and without caffeine. As long as you treat both with respect and like how you do it though, like I think that you can still have high quality sleep. As long as you cut off alcohol 4 hours before, don't overconsume it, 1 or 2 glasses, and then you only have caffeine in the morning, don't have any after like midday, and that way you can really sleep. So I think in the future, like my biggest objective is just to remain moderate with both intakes. Take a day or two off of caffeine every single week on like a Saturday or Sunday or midweek if I'm feeling good that morning. Just take a day off caffeine or 2 days. That way I have this consistent, like my tolerance stays low. I don't overconsume it, and that's my objective there. And the same goes for alcohol. I want to just limit myself into how frequently I actually consume these things. You guys, I am a man that is interested in many things. I run a holding company. I love taking care of my health. I love optimizing life and efficiencies and automations and all sorts of things in that regard. I love to travel. I want to travel. I want to do amazing things in my life. I want to live an adventurous life. That's the God's honest truth. I want to live life well. And I want to share a lot of that with people. I want my life to have some documentation behind it. I started doing video journaling, and it's been very impactful in my life. And so I want to continue to do this kind of stuff, continue to make this. And if you guys enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and the subscribe button. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you for watching.